In March 2023, Xi Jinping touches down in Moscow. Amid the harshest economic blockade from the West, the Chinese leader makes it clear for everyone he isn't the USA's puppet, and Russia sends a strong message to the world and its people that it's got some influential friends. The Russian media dubs this meeting a major turning point in history. China's leader calls Putin a dear friend, and Putin in turn calls the Power of Siberia gas pipeline the deal of the century. Putin promises Russians another groundbreaking deal, with Power of Siberia 2 being in the final stages of agreement. So far, so good. But what folks don't know is that Power of Siberia 2, once known as Outplayed, has been in the agreement stage for almost 2 decades now. China isn't exactly cozying up to Russia for free, and is always looking to lower the gas price. It took 8 years to seal the deal on Power of Siberia 1, and it might have taken even longer if Russia hadn't annexed Crimea in 2014. Russia wouldn't want to sell its gas cheaper than the competition for sure. The China-Russia tango over gas deals started almost 2 decades ago, back in 2006. That's when President Vladimir Putin paid an official visit to China, and the two countries signed a total of 14 different agreements, protocols, and memorandums. Just so you're in the loop, when big players agree on something, even at the corporate level, there's a whole bunch of preliminary agreements before the real deal is sealed. With countries, it's even more complex and way slower. Let's zoom in on the memorandums on natural gas supplies to China. Looks and sounds promising, could be a cash cow for Russia. After signing this memo, Russian politicians and state media started painting a picture-perfect scenario for the country. RIA Novosti threw around plans to supply China with a massive 80 billion cubic meters of gas. Remember this number, it's going to be important later. The Russian president confidently stated that gas will flow to China via 2 routes, through Altai to the western provinces of China and around Lake Baikal to the eastern regions of China. Let's sum this up a bit. In 2006, Russia wanted to sell gas through 2 routes, western and eastern, aiming for a total of 80 billion cubic meters annually, promising happiness by 2011. Fast forward a bit, at the start of 2023, you'd find news like this all over Russian media. Those volumes amounted to only 15.5 billion cubic meters. Looking at this picture through a historical lens, it's wild how from the grand expectations in 2006, 16 years later we're dealing with much more down-to-earth figures in 2022. It's no secret that politicians tend to exaggerate promises, and Putin could not hit up China and return empty-handed, at least not without a loud victory in words. Well, it's not a deal yet, but it's a memorandum, and we have colossal plans ahead. But why couldn't Russia and China get on the same page? In a nutshell, the Chinese dragon isn't a paper tiger. The Russian authorities aim to start pumping 80 billion cubic meters of gas via 2 routes by 2011. Yet come 2011, the only thing in sight was another round of negotiations. Now the Chinese leader comes to Russia to talk some business. They sign a few more memorandums and agreements, but the much-wanted gas deal is still not there. What went south? Why couldn't these countries reach an understanding when, in public, they were all buddy-buddy, acting like good neighbors, and the deal was supposedly all set 5 years earlier? The answer is as old as time. Money. Parties still need to resolve many controversies, with the main ones revolving around the price. As Igor Sechin mentioned yesterday, Russia expects gas supplies to China to be equally profitable as Gazprom's European contracts, with the average price this year projected to be $352 per 1,000 cubic meters, according to Gazprom's forecasts. Meanwhile, for the Western gas pipeline, Beijing suggests a price similar to what China pays for gas from Central Asia, which is about $250 per 1,000 cubic meters. This leaves a gap of about $100. So all these fancy memos and agreements boil down to one scene. Psst, China, want to buy my gas? Yeah, I do. $350. No. Come on, take it. No. How much you want? $250. Nah, I'm good. In 2011, China and Russia couldn't agree on the price. Russia wanted the European price, while China insisted on the rate it paid for the Turkmen gas. Here's another juicy bit that might have slipped past the Russian media. A few days after Hu Jintao's visit to Moscow, the People's Daily, a Chinese newspaper, dropped an article stating that people in China and Russia who value cooperation between the two countries feel confusion and disappointment due to the gas price disputes and the failure to sign the oil agreement. Controversies over gas prices are quite normal as each party defends its interests, and China, after all, isn't quick on board either. So, is the gas contract not that big of a deal? Maybe it's just the media and politicians hyping it up. Well, this is not the case. That same study covered a content analysis of all joint declarations over 20 years. Turns out energy supplies to China were the top topic of discussion. It is highly unlikely that the most discussed topics aren't a big deal. Let's look at it from another angle. Russia got the Power of Siberia 2 route out west at that time, pretty much ready to roll, just needs a little stretch to reach China. I mean, not using it would have been quite foolish. And the Power of Siberia out east, well, let's just say it was in the planning stages back then. But there are the Chelyabinskoye and Kovodkinskoye gas fields, and that gas needs to go somewhere, and there's no other China next to these fields. Plus, by that time, Russia was already feeling the pressure to redo the price tags on natural fuels from Europe. In short, Russia needed new markets determined by location to keep the cash flowing. Plus, selling gas to China would strengthen the Russian position in its negotiations with Europe and would mean a real attempt to diversify markets. And China, oh yeah, they'd get the gas to keep their industrial engine revving. Still, China had the upper hand in negotiations. No mandatory reliance on pipes and gas fields, plus diversification in gas supplies. They could take their pick. This might be news to some, but China's polyamory is deep in their culture. Russian headlines are shouting about the record-breaking hydrocarbons heading to China. But let's cut to the chase. How much does China really need Russia? If you're thinking the Russian super patriots are about to have a heart attack, well, the thing is that they are going to be fine. China does need Russia, that's a fact, but not as the one and only. Surprise, surprise, Turkmenistan, Uzbekistan, Kazakhstan and even Myanmar are also in the gas relationship with the Chinese dragon. So who's got the strongest gas bond? Let's check the numbers. If you analyze the Chinese customs data, turns out in 2021, Turkmenistan was the main gas supplier to China. And when it comes to the overall gas profits, Turkmenistan's leading the pack again. And Russia, well, it's number 2, going far behind. And look, Myanmar's following closely. Now let's talk about prices. Even though Russia isn't pumping the most gas, could they be making more money per kilo? Here goes an expected plot twist. Myanmar's taking the lead, selling gas to China at a premium price. Central Asia's somewhere in the middle and the cheapest gas China's getting from Russia. So, in the gas world, Russia's not the East's top partner. It's in the mix with others, and for some reason, Russia's selling gas at the lowest prices. And, well, let's just omit Myanmar from this gas talk. Now we will size up the Turkmenistan-China gas pipeline against the Power of Siberia. The length of the pipeline from the Chayinskoye field to the Chinese border is 2,150 kilometers. And from the Turkmen-Galkanish field it is 1,830 kilometers. The Russian route is heading straight into the gas-hungry industrial zone of Heiha, plus it is closer to the industrial east of China. The Turkmenistan route comes to China from the west all through the Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region, 3,000 kilometers away from Beijing, serving gas through deserts. So the Russian gas pipeline is longer, put together in the brutal Siberian winters, and possesses some logistic value to China, but somehow it's the cheapest. How did that happen? Well, let's rewind the clock and explore the backstory of the Power of Siberia agreement. Back in 2006, Russia was dreaming big, thinking the gas pipeline would be up and running by 2011. Fast forward to the reality of 2011, the countries were still stuck in the negotiations. Meanwhile, China could afford a delay, staying cool and pragmatic, signing a memo with Russia in 2006 while they already had a full-blown deal with Turkmenistan on pipeline construction. Back then, they promised that from 2009 onwards, Turkmenistan would be supplying 30 billion cubic meters of gas over 30 years. And guess what? It wasn't just talk. On December the 14th, 2009, there's a grand opening of the Turkmenistan-China route. And as you now know, Turkmenistan is a leader in gas supplies to China today. With different suppliers, China had choices and could play hard to get, giving Russia the cold shoulder for a solid 8 years. Now, there's some game changers for Russian history. Russia lost its influence in Ukraine. Then there were Ukraine's Maidan protests and the Crimea annexation. Bam! Sanctions became the new buzzword for Russians. The West and Russia's gas love story hit rock bottom real quick. Interstate contracts had previously been used as political leverage, but since 2014, this tactic reached new heights. In 2022, the West tried to stop providing Russia with technology, and Russia halted gas pumping, citing allegedly scheduled maintenance or demanding payments in rubles. Back in 2014, Russia needed new friends and buyers and needed them fast, so that they could prevent the West from pulling the plug on supplies, cutting volumes or haggling over prices. Putin needed a new picture so that he could show his nation that Russia was not all alone in the field. On March the 21st, 2014, Putin signed the Russia-Crimea Treaty, annexing Crimea, in fact. 2 months later, Putin's in China again, but the gas negotiations, tough and chaotic. China's got plenty of gas supplies already, and just 10 days before Putin's visit, Turkmenistan's president came by and they had just signed a bunch of deals, mostly gas deals, of course. Putin's at a disadvantage, given the West's sanctions and no new way in sight to bring home to Russians. When Putin landed in China, things got weird. PetroChina's press secretary pulled off a surprise move: no gas contract with Russia. We won't sign. At the moment, the price of imported gas and the price of gas on the domestic market are on opposite sides. We are already losing money on gas imports and cannot lose even more. And then another plot twist. Just hours later, breaking news: Russia and China have finally signed the Power of Siberia agreement. Putin called it the biggest contract in the history of the USSR and Russia. In 2014, Russia sealed the deal for the Power of Siberia, the eastern route. China turned down the western route, initially named Altai, then the Power of Siberia too, as the Turkmenistan route already had been going on that side. As you recall, the western direction was incredibly convenient for Russia, thanks to the existing infrastructure, but China shrugged it off because, major manufacturing centers are in the east of China. For 8 long years, China and Russia could not reach an agreement on the gas price. Only after facing sanctions from the West over Crimea, a gas contract was finally signed 2 months later. And people were now itching to know the details of this long-awaited pact, the price Russia and China shook on, to be exact. But these details remained confidential for several more years. Now every housewife wants to know the price of gas, but this is inappropriate. At that time, all we got to know was that China could drop $25 billion as an advance payment. Of course, if memos aren't worth a thing, then words are just talk. And guess what? A year later, China pulled back the cash, giving Russia a chance to fund the pipeline from its own pockets. Russians were then told that rejecting the advance payment was advantageous, hinting that China wanted to use this payment as a leverage to cut the final price. To its credit, the Chinese dragon had a grip of steel. Back then, skeptics said the project wouldn't be profitable, trying to guess the price or crunch numbers. There were some murky tales, like that Sberbank analyst got fired for his report that Putin's buddies, Rottenberg and Timchenko, were the real winners of this major gas deal and other gas contracts, while the project itself was low profit. Another perspective goes like this. The project cannot be low profit because Russia initiated the largest construction project globally, providing a boost to the economy, and it will soon be generating profits from gas deals. Otherwise, these gas fields would have remained abandoned. As they say, history's got its own sorting hat, but the facts are facts. If we crunch the numbers, here's the score. $55 billion spent on the Power of Siberia, and in 3 years, Russia got $6 billion. Nominally, it'll take another decade for the revenue to catch up with the investments. And if we're talking about net profits, it's going to take a few decades more. To be square, Russia's still a long way from the dream of supplying 80 billion cubic meters, but gas exports have been on the upswing, hitting 15.5 billion in 2022, 22.7 billion in 2023, and an expected 30 billion this year. But folks, it's still a waiting game that depends on China's needs, global gas prices, and whatever else China may think of as favorable conditions. Last year, history repeated itself before our very eyes. Russia's invasion of Ukraine has historically worsened relations with the West. President Putin is attempting to reach an agreement with China's president on a new gas pipeline. And just like that, after a bunch of meetings, no signed deals, just crossing fingers for a soon-to-come agreement on Power of Siberia 2, after nearly 2 decades of some chit-chat. And once again, the Chinese dragon is waiting, dealing for better terms, asking big questions like, maybe it's smarter to build another pipeline from Turkmenistan, even if their gas costs more. They're not getting involved in any wars after all. China's got a playbook, no eggs in one basket. That lets them stay cool and always wait for better conditions. Their stance is solid, with real independence. And the irony, Putin was in the same spot once. In 2006, during his visit to China, he said, "Despite the significant success of bilateral relations, Russia still faces a variety of problems, such as unfavorable changes in the Russian-Chinese trade and the nature of Russian exports to China, which is mainly raw materials," the president noted speaking at the forum. The current trade model largely depends on the commodity markets. Therefore, to ensure the stability of mutual trade, it is necessary to improve the quality of trade flows and develop technological and production cooperation. If only Russia stuck to it, they might not have been forced to accept the terms of China, pretending that the Power of Siberia is the deal of the century, missing the real deal of the millennium between China and Turkmenistan. Now Russia's got no choice but to lean on its east side big bro. The big question remains, what's Russia willing to give up this time? We thank you all, and especially our Patreon supporters. You know who to share this video with, and I'm the researcher.